Western philosophy began in ancient Greece, around 6 centuries BCE. We will be looking at how both the philosophical and the scientific traditions started in the remote regions of ancient Greece, with Thales and other men from the city of Miletus asking questions about the nature of the cosmos. We will see what Pythagoras had to say about numbers, forming the foundations of the cosmos, and Xenophanes' views on the nature of gods. We will then see what philosophers like Heraclitus and Parmenides had to say about change. Please like, share, and subscribe to help the channel bring you more content. 1. Introduction. The earliest philosophers sought to answer questions about the nature of the world and the universe. This is no different from what religion does. However, in contrast, philosophers began trying to explain the world and the universe through experience and systematic reasoning. Rather than appealing to mythological explanations, these early intellectuals sought theories based on hypotheses, arguments, and evidence. Coming from the reaches outside mainland Greece, these thinkers would provide the foundation for both philosophy and natural science. They argued that knowing the truth leads to wisdom. In fact, the English word philosophy is a descendant of the Greek word philosophia. Philos meaning loving, and sophia meaning wisdom. What is everything made of? Philosophy in the West is considered to have begun with a man called Thales, circa 600 BCE. He lived in a Greek city-state called Miletus, in the ancient Greek region of Ionia, in present-day Turkey. Thales and his followers, known as the Milesian philosophers, the philosophers from Miletus, are often classified as natural philosophers. They tried to understand nature. A common theme in their philosophy was the question, is there a basic substance, out of which everything is made? What we know of Thales comes from later sources, as the man himself didn't write anything. A colorful anecdote about him comes from Plato, telling the story of how an absent-minded Thales fell into a well because he wasn't looking where he was walking. It is a common stereotype, still applied to philosophers and scientists, even today, that they are so absorbed in their thinking about big, abstract things, that they fail to see the little things. In turn, this anecdote about Thales can be vindicated with another anecdote about him, this time by Aristotle. It seems Thales was rather poor. However, through his study of astronomy, he predicted a large harvest of olives. While it was still winter, he invested the little money he had on all the olive business in Miletus. Being out of season, and thinking him mad, no one was interested in bidding against him. However, when the season came for making oil, he ended up making a fortune. This way, he showed everyone that philosophers can easily make money if they wanted to, but that their ambition lies elsewhere. Looking around us, we see an enormous variety of things, solid, liquid, gas, living, inanimate, and so on. It seems reasonable to suppose that there must be some source that is common to all these things. 2. The Milesians. By looking at the world around him, Thales observed how water is everywhere. We have seas, lakes, clouds, snow, and rain. When earthquakes happen, the seas roar up in waves, and beat the land with water. When it rains, the sky pours down water. Crops grow, when we give them water, and when we breathe out droplets of water. We sweat, we cry, and no living thing can survive without water. Therefore, Thales concluded, water must be the foundation of everything. The underlying source and origin of the world. The arche. Thales had considerable influence on other Greek thinkers, and on Western history. Other philosophers from Miletus, influenced by Thales, would also search for the arche. Anaximander of Miletus, circa 580 BCE, was a follower of Thales. He held that the arche was one indefinable substance, that he called aperon, or the boundless. This aperon, according to Anaximander, is neither water, nor any other element. If any element were infinite, he explained, it would take over, and destroy the others. Take fire as an example. If fire were infinite, it would burn earth, and destroy water. If, on the other hand, water were infinite, it would put out all fire. Therefore, the infinite is something other than the elements. Anaximander concluded that other elements come to be from this one, infinite, eternal, indeterminate thing. Anaximenes of Miletus, circa 560 BCE, was, in turn, a student of Anaximander. He agreed with his teacher, that the underlying substance, was one, and infinite. However, unlike Anaximander, Anaximenes defined the underlying substance, as air. It evaporates and condenses to form other things. We are surrounded by air in its thinnest state. When it condenses, it becomes wind, then clouds. When further condensed, it becomes water, and earth, and stones, and all the other things. While Anaximenes' theory may seem far-fetched to us in modernity, it illustrates an important distinction with Anaximander's theory. While Anaximander placed reality beyond what can be known, calling it indefinable, making it purely rational, the pupil made it squarely observable through the senses. This distinction between rational knowledge, based on reason, and empirical knowledge, based on the senses, would trace itself throughout much subsequent philosophy. 3. Other philosophers from Ionia. The influence of the Milesian philosophers spread to other neighboring cities in Ionia. Pythagoras, circa 530 BCE, is best remembered today for the Pythagoras theorem, a mathematical and geometrical formula about right-angled triangles. Described by Bertrand Russell as intellectually one of the most important men that ever lived, he is quoted as being both Parmenides and Plato's main source of inspiration. Pythagoras and his followers held that numbers formed the foundations of the cosmos. Mathematical knowledge seems to be exact and certain, and does not depend on observation. Rather, it can be arrived at simply by thinking. Consequently, it was thought to give us an ideal form of knowledge. Geometry deals with exact circles, but no actual circular object that we perceive through our senses, such as a circle drawn with a compass on a sheet of paper, or the wooden wheel of a cart, is perfectly circular. There are always imperfections and irregularities, even if microscopic. However, Pythagoras claimed, the perfect circle actually exists as a thought, as an idea. It's a mathematical object that can be reasoned, and, as such, does not succumb to time, change, or decay, the same way as the wooden wheel. From this, it seems to follow that thought is nobler than sense, and the objects of thought are more real than those we can perceive through our senses. Xenophanes of Colophon, circa 525 BC, believed all things to be made out of earth and water. However, his more memorable views are about the gods. He is thought to have been the first Greek thinker to offer a complex and partially systematic account of divine nature. He points out how the great Greek poets, Homer and Hesiod, have attributed to the gods all those things that are disgraceful in human beings: adultery, deceit, stealing, and others. These gods, Xenophanes said, speak with a human voice, and wear human clothes. If oxen, horses or lions had hands with which they could paint, and produce works of art, their gods, in turn, would be in the form of oxen, horses, and lions, too. Xenophanes concluded, that there must be one God, who is greatest, among both gods, and men. This greatest of gods, is unlike us mortals, in either form, or thought. With the ability to see, think, and hear everything, he is also able to move everything, through thought alone, without himself moving. For Heraclitus, circa 500 BCE, everything is in flux, everything flows, everything changes. No man ever steps in the same river twice, he reportedly said. The one constant thing in a constantly changing world was what he called the logos. The meaning of logos is subject to interpretation. However, it is commonly understood to mean reason, a universal principle of order and knowledge, which Heraclitus symbolized by fire. Things in the world, he said, have opposing, but united qualities. The sea, for example, is both the purest and the most polluted water. For fish, it is drinkable and healthy; for men, undrinkable and harmful. Fond of paradoxes, metaphors, and contradictions, since antiquity, the difficulty in understanding Heraclitus's philosophy earned him the name, the Obscure. 4. The philosophers from Elea. Nothing changes and everything is one. Another important center for ancient philosophy was Elea, a city in southern Italy, then part of Greater Greece. The Eleatic philosophers were a group founded by Parmenides of Elea, circa 475 BCE. With his followers, Zeno of Elea, and Milesians of Samos, Parmenides would reject the validity of sense experience. This stands in contrast to the Milesians, who held an empiricist view of knowledge, that is, the Milesians saw knowledge as the result of information we receive through our senses. Using logic and reasoning, Parmenides concluded that only one thing exists, all things are one. For things to change, they have to go from being to non-being. Imagine you leaving the room; you go from your being in the room to your non-being in the room. Likewise, to join the room, you'd go from non-being to being in the room. However, Parmenides argues that even non-being is being. Our ability to think and talk about non-being transforms it into being. Thus, there really is no such thing as non-being. They are one; all things are one. Since all things are one, then nothing changes; change is an illusion. Therefore, everything that we can think of is a false representation of the unity of everything. We call such a philosophy of oneness monism. Reality, according to Parmenides, is like a perfect sphere, infinite, unchanged, and eternal. The senses cannot understand this unity, since they give us inconsistent information. It is only through rational thinking that we can go beyond the false appearances of senses. Only then can we arrive at fundamental truths. Did you enjoy this video? Watch PhilosophyMT's other videos. Please like, subscribe, and share to help the channel bring you more content.